But somebody who really hated Homecoming, okay, somebody online who really hated Homecoming, said that what they should have done, what should have happened in that movie, is that, you know, okay, if you're going to have Tony Stark hand him the keys to the kingdom initially, that's fine. But what should have happened in that movie is that at some point, that costume and the stuff that Tony Stark gave him should have failed him, and he should have had to make it on his own with just his web shooters and his own costume, and he should have had to prove that it was Peter Parker who's Spider-Man and that he's not Iron Man Jr. And I sat and I read that and I went, that is the movie. That's what's in the movie. He gets the costume taken away from him, but he still insists on going after the Vulture in his sweats with his web shooters, and decides that whether he's got the suit or not, he's going to be Spider-Man, and he wins. That is what's in the movie. Why are and you're not seeing that because you already decided you were going to hate the movie. And that's the only argument I have against fans and their preconceptions, is that I think they're cheating themselves out of some enjoyment. You know, there's something to enjoy in all of them, but you know, sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that enjoyed those first two Fantastic Four movies. Especially Rise of the Silver Surfer, I thought was terrific.
You're not alone, by the way. I enjoyed both of them.
Yeah, I thought they nailed the characters there the way I'm waiting for them to nail Peter Parker in a movie, you know, that kind of thing. That certainly there were changes. There's always going to be changes, and maybe one of the things that helps me is that I'm old enough that I grew up in the 70s. I grew up with the Nick Hammond Spider-Man. I grew up with Red Brown as Captain America. I grew up, you know, we accepted a lot more that was a lot less than what we're getting now. And we dealt with it. You know, it was still fun to see a Spider-Man movie. It was still fun to see a Captain America movie. So when I was expecting nothing, when they said they were going to make an X-Men movie, I'm going, oh, that'll be interesting. But when I saw the first pictures of Hugh Jackman where they bothered to give him the hairstyle, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Really? Wow. Somebody's actually read the books? Holy mackerel, you know. So the fact that they've gotten Captain America right, the fact that in that first Thor movie, that's Thor. The fact that, you know, Doctor Strange is Doctor Strange, the rapping doesn't bother me as much, because it's one of those things, like, you remember when the first Batman movie came out and we always knew Batman was cool, but you'd be walking out of the theater and everybody's talking about how cool Batman is, and you're kind of like, yeah, I know. Well, welcome to the club. You know, that kind of thing. That's how I feel with the Marvel films, because they are presenting the characters with all their differences. They're presenting the characters in such a way that I feel the broader audience now does know who Captain America is, does know who Iron Man. I mean, Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark is not who Tony Stark was before the first Iron Man movie. He very much made it his own character, and they've kind of followed along in the comics, and that's fine. You know, because there was nothing he did that violated who Tony Stark was in the comics at the time. He basically, you know, we were always told Tony Stark was a fun guy. We only got to see it as much as any given writer could show us that, you know, whether it was a Clark Gable kind of playboy, or whether it was a 70s permed hair kind of playboy or whatever, you know, and I thought Robert Downey Jr. brought that to the role incredibly well, you know, that. So I think the characters are being presented in a way that I, as a fan, can be proud that, yeah, I knew they were cool. I knew they were fun. I mean, the only one I can't really speak to too much is Guardians of the Galaxy, because when they said they were going to make Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm old enough that I'm thinking, oh, cool, Vance Astro and Martin X and Charlie 27 and all this. Yeah. So when I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, I went, who are these guys? I know Star-Lord, but he didn't look like that, you know, that kind of thing. So, but overall, I think Kevin Feige has done an amazing job and has nothing to apologize for at all. And yet I talk to people who think, the Thor movies are crap. Iron Man 2 and 3 is crap, and it's like, I'm sorry you didn't enjoy them, because I think if you relax, there's a lot of fun in those movies. I mean, I loved Iron Man 2 being about the father and son relationship. I loved Iron Man 3 being the lesson that he's trying to teach Peter, because people were criticizing that line in Homecoming where Tony says to Pete, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. And they went, oh, that's great coming from Iron Man. That's what Iron Man 3 was all about, guys. Did you see Iron Man 3? Iron Man 3 was all about Tony Stark without the suit. And, so, I mean, I think they're being consistent with the characters, and I think they're doing a pretty solid job. And I'm curious to see where we go from here with Tom Holland. I mean, I wasn't crazy about that shock ending where Mysterio outs him and all that kind of stuff, but we'll see where they go with that. If it's like the old comics, he'll get Hobie Brown to put on his Prowler gloves under his Spider-Man costume and then show up at a party or something, but I don't think it's going to be that. So yeah, I mean, I guess, I'm also older, so I'm very forgiving, but I'm happy these characters are out in the mass market now. And I'm happy that for the most part, they're being portrayed correctly. And
Mr. Frenz, since you touched on it, I must ask, how do you feel about the way that Robin has been portrayed cinematically within what Warner Brothers and DC have done for their movies?
We're talking about the animated ones then, or just
no, the live action pieces?
Well, yeah, I mean, until Ben, he hasn't been mentioned at all, has he? I mean, I liked the Chris O'Donnell thing. I liked the Robin parts of that movie. I didn't like that was the Riddler one, wasn't it? Riddler and
yes,
Two-Face.
That's right. Two-Face.
I never thought I'd see Tommy Lee Jones chew the furniture the way he did in that movie. And I didn't like that. I didn't like Jim Carrey as the Riddler. I didn't like Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. What I did like was the relationship between Bruce and Dick and Alfred and what they were trying to do with Robin, even though he wasn't a kid, so that, like I said, I'm able to like certain parts of the movie without embracing the whole.
By the way, thank you for saying that, because I feel vindicated now.
Well, it's IMHO. Believe me, my opinion is as humble as anybody else's. But because when it comes to the next one with Clooney, I thought Clooney was a great choice to play Batman. I thought the relationship between Bruce and Alfred in that movie was incredible. But Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze was exactly what they wanted it to be. It was a joke, So, but as far as casting, I haven't had a problem with a lot of the casting. Any good actor can pull it off. It has to do with what the movie is. It has to do with what they're doing with the movie.
I guess I may be one of those fans that kind of complains and critiques and doesn't like. But let me explain my position. When I look at these movies, I'm a fan of these characters. I grew up with these characters. I believe in these characters. I know the magic in these characters. I know the feeling that I got reading some of the stories that you wrote. I remember how excited I was when I saw Spider-Man fighting Firelord, for example, that you depicted. I remembered the Fantastic Four by Kirby and all the these were adventures to me that I cherish. And so knowing that, when I watch a Thor, for example, movie, there are a couple of ways to look at it. And I think most fans look at it from the point of view of, oh my God, I'm just so glad that you're depicting Thor. I'll take it. Whatever you give me, I'll take. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as knowing what Thor could be, did you come close to delivering what that potential could be? And in that sense, I felt the movie failed. I felt that the first half of the movie, when he's in Asgard, I absolutely loved. When he comes to Earth, there was a tremendous disconnection for me because it wasn't the character that I knew and that I loved. And there was a letdown with the climax of the movie with a character like Destroyer, which to me could have been handled in such a much more powerful way. It's the same thing that I feel between Captain America, to talk about what you're talking about, Captain America, the First Avenger, and Captain America, Winter Soldier. First Avenger to me was a disappointment. I loved the way that they were faithful to the origin. I loved the first half of the movie. The second half of the movie was more of a tribute to the Raiders of the Lost Ark type of approach rather than the superhero approach. Now and I felt that it didn't maximize the character the way that it could have been maximized. Now we come to Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier, personally, I wanted to see Captain America's full suit with no apologies, with no straps. I wanted to see Captain America in his full glory. I didn't get to see that, but what I got to see was a fantastic, absolutely great movie. So I'm able to overlook differences and changes that don't necessarily fit my particular, connection to the character for great delivery. The delivery in Winter Soldier and ultimately in Civil War was much greater from a presentation point of view, from my opinion, than it was in the First Avengers. Same thing with Thor. The potential that I see in Thor, and the same thing with the Fantastic Four. You could look at the Fantastic Four and say, hey, well, we get to see Fantastic Four, we get to see Silver Surfer. I say, are you kidding me? Haven't you not read The Coming of Galactus and how powerful that story could have been portrayed and how much of a failure for not having depicted it in that same degree of power? So that's where my position comes from. It's not, it's what could have been rather than what you gave me.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. But if you live your life that way,
Go on.
Disappointed a lot, I mean, that's that I feel bad. I'm sorry that you didn't enjoy those films, because I mean, just not that long ago, I put it in my VCR and watched it. I really enjoyed The Incredible Hulk Returns. I was on Thor when Eric Kramer played Thor on the Hulk TV pilot, the Hulk movie.
I remember that.
DeFalco and I were laughing on the phone because we both really liked it, and nobody would make eye contact with us the next day. He went into the office the next day and nobody would look at him because they were afraid that he hated it, or that, that if they liked it, he would hate it or whatever. I don't know. But nobody would mention it to me either, like it was a sore topic. And I thought the guy did an incredible job.
But as by the way, we always talk to you about Spider-Man, but one of the runs that I was a huge fan of, because Thor is my second favorite character, was your run on Thor. But you're telling me the guy who depicted that Thor going up against the Celestials, Thor going up, that guy was accepting, come on.
I'm not crazy about the idea that, that they've turned Thor to a large extent into Hercules. I wish they'd put Hercules in there instead, that kind of thing. But, and I like Thor a little stiffer, but I also understand that, I don't know, the creative attitudes are different in movies. I mean, when they sat down to make Iron Man 2, okay? Iron Man as a character had already been around, like 50 years, 45 years, something like that. They published consistently in those 45 years. They all sat down to make Iron Man 2, and it was either Favreau or one of the writers said in an interview that the comics really didn't give them a direction forward. What? I mean, you have 40-some years worth of material there to draw from in whatever form you want to draw. And ultimately, that's what they did. But, and the attitude between movies is that like real time is passing between the films. And Chris Hemsworth he didn't grow up with Thor. He's not a Thor fan like you and I are a Thor fan. He's a Thor fan in that he got to make that first movie. He enjoyed it. He likes the character, but he wants to see the character evolve. He wants to do new things. He wants to play comedy. He wants to do this. And, you know, we're never going to come together on those two things, you know? I mean, when they said they were going to hire Taika Waititi for that film, I'm like, okay, well, there we go. You know, they're going a very specific direction that isn't the direction I would go. But there are moments in that movie, there are moments in Ragnarok that are incredible. I mean, just incredibly powerful to me. Mostly in the relationship between Thor and Loki. And, you know, you know, I can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I just
come on, but there are moments that are weak too. And don't you want it to be full, to be?
I mean, I'm not trying to defend the moments that I didn't enjoy or the things that I wouldn't have done, but I still think there's something to enjoy in there. I guess what happens is once you've worked on the character and you've had to relinquish the character and watched other people do the character, it very acclimated to the idea that other people aren't going to do what you want them to do. You know, DeFalco always said, Ron, when you get off a book, don't read the book. Don't go back. Don't read the book anymore, because all you'll be is, he actually says that about the books we're working on. He says, don't read the books, because, you know, something in the inking or something in the coloring or something in the lettering is going to piss you off. So don't look. And I've never been able to do that. I mean, for me, seeing the book on the rack and taking it off the rack and flipping through it and seeing it with the staples in it and the Marvel logo on it, that was the whole point for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, but he's not wrong. I mean, there are times going, what? Wait a minute. One of my dearest friends, you know, her, you know, she talks about her problems at work. And then I'll say, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. And she goes, what happened, Ron? Did somebody color your pants wrong? And I would say, wow, that really hurts.
Mr. Frenz, if I may, what are your thoughts on Thor: Love and Thunder? And there is a second part to this. Do you think that more than one movie should be done with the female Thor?
No, not necessarily. You know, I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it. But I'll be honest with you right now, Kevin. I didn't read any of that run. I have no idea what Jane Foster was like as Thor. Did they ever explain what Thor did that made him unable to lift Mjolnir?
Honestly, I don't remember exactly.
Because that was pretty important. Somebody whispered something in his ear that somehow made him unworthy. Does anybody remember what it was?
I'll tell you what's I'll give you my answer, and it's a very significant answer. So like you, I haven't been reading the modern comic books, but I do it for almost like homework, because you know, you have to know your material. Sure. I read that storyline and I don't remember. I genuinely don't remember.
I can't recall it either.
Because
I read the storyline.
For me, the entire story hinges on how the devil you could make Thor unworthy, you know, by saying something to him, by some realization he had or something he admitted to himself. I don't know what it is. Brett Breeding and I were talking the other day. There I go, dropping another name. We were talking the other day because there's an article out there making the rounds on Facebook, pardon me, of supposedly one of the writers of Endgame, in his opinion, was that Steve Rogers was not worthy in Age of Ultron. When he budged it, he wasn't completely worthy yet because he still had the lie of omission to Tony about his parents hanging over his head. And that once that was clear in Civil War, that freed him up to be worthy in Endgame. Brett doesn't agree with that. And I don't really agree with it either. But for me, I had a very, you know, my attitude about the worthiness of the hammer, especially in the cases that we've handled. I mean, the two times that we handled worthiness with the hammer, it was all circumstantial. It was about getting the hammer to Thor. Because
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it was in your run that Captain America became worthy of the hammer.
And it was Brett's idea. It was Brett's idea.
Yeah.
We were talking one time, and he said, "Well, you'd think if anybody were worthy of wielding Mjolnir, it would be Steve Rogers." And I went, "Hmm." So the next time I was talking to DeFalco, I said, Brett brought up an interesting point, and Tom went, "Hmm." Unfortunately, Steve was the captain at the time, but we still, made it work. But see, that's the thing. Tom always hedged his bets, because in the dialogue there, Thor's in grave jeopardy. He's piled on, and they're shooting energy weapons in his face and all this kind of stuff. And he's basically calling to Mjolnir. And Cap is piled on, and he comes up with it and spins it around like like an Olympic
Great scene, by the way. Great artwork.
athlete, and throws it to Thor. And he wielded it, and he felt something when he wielded it. But we never intended for Cap to be walking around with it. We never intended for that to necessarily ever be repeated. It was, and that's great. That's fine. When Eric moved it, we fudged it even more, because we actually showed Thor sitting there going, "Yes, Mjolnir, come here," that kind of thing. So when Eric was able to pick it up to defend Thor, we hedged it even a little bit more, because I understand that people don't want other people to lift the hammer. I get that. It should be something very specific to Thor. I don't have an issue with that. With Eric, we were trying to show the bond between Eric and Thor. We were never trying to say that Eric alone could pick up Mjolnir and walk around with it, ever, never. In fact, when he found out that the only way that he was able to wield it as Thor was that Thor was still in here somewhere in his gourd, so he was never really picking up Mjolnir himself at all. And Thunderstrike, the mace, didn't have the same enchantment.
It didn't. But actually, I'm sorry, and listening to you, it's so fascinating, and you raise up so many issues. And Kevin, forgive me if I'm dominating, if I've asked too many questions.
Please, I'm learning.
So forgive me, but so you raise a lot of questions. So 2 questions. What was the idea behind Eric and Thunderstrike? Why create that character? I have to tell you, as a fan, you took away my Thor. I still loved your artwork. I still bought the book. You took away my Thor, and I didn't understand that. So what was the idea behind that?
What happened when we created Eric specifically, even though it was a slow burn at first, we created Eric specifically to give Thor a human identity. Because one of the things that Tom and I wanted to do, and I understand where the fans of Walt would not necessarily agree with it, is what we thought was one of the core tenets of Thor, which Walt played with without doing a human identity, was the connection to mankind. Walt used Jerry Sapristi for that, and Sigurd Jarlsson for that, and all this kind of stuff. But we like the idea, the iconic version of smacking the cane and becoming Thor and all this kind of stuff.
Agreed.
So we didn't want to go back to Don Blake. So we came up with the idea of merging him with somebody. And since we always felt that Thor was a family drama, the idea of Thor's relationship with Odin is always front and center in his interactions with Asgard. We made Eric a single father, and we thought we could get some nice juxtaposition in there and stuff, and I think we succeeded to a large extent. But Eric was created specifically to be the other half of Thor. And what happened was, we were getting to the end of that run. We were getting to the end of the Thor run where we were going to separate them. And the sales department contacted Tom DeFalco and said, "So I understand that Eric's going to be leaving the strip." And he goes, yeah, as far as center stage, yes. He goes, "Well, we were wondering, we were thinking about giving him his own book." And Tom went, "Really? That's what?" And they said, "Well, that's kind of up to you." And he went, "You're serious?" And they said, "Yeah." We did not have the idea of having Eric spin off as Banana Man or something like that.
Fascinating.
Our attitude was, Eric will remain a supporting character, but we were going to separate them and get on with it. Actually, at one point, what our plan was, we kind of played with it in a what if story we did. what our plan was is that Eric was going to go to Earth as Thor and still be Thor for a while, but Thor was going to stay on Asgard and become king of Asgard.
Hmm.
And then after an arc of that, Loki was going to come back. And Loki was going to attack Earth, thinking that Earth was easy prey now that it was just Eric. And he was going to kill Eric. And Thor was going to be pissed at himself and at Loki because he put a target on Eric. And he was going to realize at that point that, you know, if I'm going to protect Earth, then I have to be serious about it. And he was going to hand the throne to somebody. And we played with the idea of having him marry Sif and then have Sif just become the queen of Asgard. But we hadn't really, you know.
Oh my God. What a missed opportunity. That sounds so great.
But I mean, Thor was going to come back and Eric was going to die. I mean, that was kind of the original plan, because we didn't want anybody, you know, having Eric show up in the Avengers. You remember what was going on with Hank Pym there for a while, where he was like Dr. Pym, who looked like Doctor Who, and he was wearing a couple of different outfits, and they tried different.
Yeah.
We didn't want Eric to become a character like that, you know. Tom's code word for it was Banana Man. You know, we don't want Eric becoming Banana Man.
Interesting.
So he was going to die, but then when the sales department came and said, no, the sales have been great. The Eric run sold incredibly well. The Eric run actually opened up the sales, the newsstand sales, for people who might not have enjoyed Thor before because of the Shakespearean dialect and all this kind of stuff, were enjoying the book. So they thought Eric was a big part of that. And they said, we want you to do something with Eric. So we set to work coming up the best we could with something to do with Eric. I mean, you know, coming off of, I mean, of course, Walt had already done Beta Ray Bill, which gave us a bit of a, you know, somewhat of a template to go by. So we didn't go very far past Walt to come up with the idea of Odin making him his own weapon. We made sure it was never as powerful as Mjolnir and everything, because Odin's not stupid. He's not going to give a loaded, powerful gun to a monkey, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, and bit by bit, we came up with the mace. We came up with the Thunderstrike name. We, you know, and all this kind of put it together, and we pitched it, and they liked it fine. And we wanted to go with Eric. I mean, we figured, you know, people did Thor before us. People are going to do Thor after us, but Eric was our guy. So we, what surprised us, what surprised us is that as Al Milgrom came with us, and our letterer Rick Parker came with us. You know, everybody who was on Thor with us came over with us to Thunderstrike. That we were not expecting. We were not expecting that. And the book sold really, really well.
It did. Your run.
The only reason Thunderstrike was canceled at the time it was Ron Perlman's people. That was it fell victim to there was this meeting with Ron Perlman, who was this cosmetics mogul who had bought Marvel at that point. And a bunch of his people were in a room at Marvel having a big meeting, and Tom DeFalco was in that meeting. And one of Ron Perlman's people suggested that if you cancel half the line, then the half that's left will sell twice as well.
Oh, gosh.
And Tom laughed out loud and kind of went like, oh my God, you're serious. And he said, that's not how publishing works.
At all.
You know, if you cancel a kid's favorite book, he's not just going to pick up another book. He's going to buy a soda and a slice of pizza and a computer game or something. You
Absolutely.
know,
Absolutely.
You're hurting yourself in the marketplace. And when he laughed at that idea, he was marked for termination. He was fired shortly thereafter.
Wow.
But that wave of cancellation took out Thunderstrike, and it took out War Machine, and it took out Force Works, and it took out a whole bunch of books that were one-offs, that were spin-offs, that were selling really well. They just, boom, you're gone, because they weren't going to cancel Thor, they weren't going to cancel Iron Man, they weren't going to cancel the Avengers, right? So that's how the book ended up getting canceled. And then what really pissed me off is that a couple of years later, whoever was in charge of Marvel at the time decided, I think it was Bill Jemas, but I'm not sure, decided to throw a whole bunch of money at the Image guys to do Heroes Reborn, right?
Yeah.
And what happened with Heroes Reborn? They had their version of Thor in the Avengers, but they canceled the Thor book. And I went, oh my God, really? Because that was the last thing anybody would have considered at the time Thunderstrike was canceled. You know, I would have loved to have gone sale for sale with Thor at the time we were canceled and canceled the book that's not selling as well, you know, that kind of thing. Because I think we would have survived that one.
Wow.
But yeah, it was tough. It was shocking, and it was hugely disappointing. And I was under contract with Marvel at the time, so Mark Grunwald stepped forward and tried desperately to find me other work to fulfill my contract, but he couldn't do it. And that was when I moved over to Superman. Mike Carlin came to my rescue.
This looks like a job for Superman.
Hey, look! It's Spider-Man!
The dynamic duo return next week. Don't listen.